Ramon Kubicek, we're looking at one of your series in interviews. As a religious studies scholar and knowing your affinity for mythology and legends, I can't help thinking of Janus, the god who looks at beginnings and endings, at entrances and exits. And yet you've interfaced. Rather than looking outward, one looks inward. How would you respond to this?
Well, I'd say that's very well put, Professor Cornet. When I was looking at doing these kinds of small format paintings, what struck me immediately that there was a kind of intimacy between the viewer and the work. And so what immediately I thought of was interviews with a hyphen between the inter and the views. So that what I'm calling forth, yes, I'm calling forth the idea of interviews as one word, where you're a process of questioning, what is this about, what's happening, but also interviews as a means, as a process of looking, so that one, as you implied here, is looking outwards at the world, at the same time is looking inwards. But this sometimes involves an evolving sense of self, which is not necessarily always one and the same. And Janus faced, not always, but often problematic, simply because the vision is split. But so it allows us to look at the dynamism of multiple points of view.
The sense of self, would you consider this a Freudian approach?
Freud is not someone I thought of, much as I have some respect for Sigmund. It's not an approach that I thought of in this respect. So when I was looking at also the kind of different points of encompassed in the paint there, I was thinking of how the world is composed in many ways of different points of experience, as well as points of illumination. So we're surrounded by that, and it absorbs us and it also repels us, so we're constantly looking at it. One moment we look at it and it's paint, the other moment we're looking at it and we still come back to these two faces, these two heads.
Ramon Kubicek, when I look at this work, I cannot help thinking of cosmology. In fact, of constellations. There's something constellar about this composition. I know that you're involved in what I would refer to as a religious studies scholar, a spirit quest. To what extent does this work exemplify your own spirit quest?
Well, all my work in some way reflects my sense of being connected to the divine, or trying to be connected to the divine self, to the divine. But I don't see there much difference between the divine and the very large universal sense and the divine within oneself, except to the degree that one can often be lost and in some way discomposed or alienated from one's inner self, as one is also sometimes alienated from the larger sacred. So for me, yes, I'm very interested in universal patterns, in cosmologies of all kinds, in what looking at pictures and ideas of the galaxies or constellations and so forth say to us, not only about how the universe is put together, but of ourselves. The very fact that human beings have always been attracted to it is not, on the face of it, something that's understandable, except that in the sense that they feel a kinship, that there's something on a microcosmic level that reflects the macrocosmic. And so, as the same famous saying, as above, so below, goes, in some way is a measuring stick for my work too.
And on a practical level, the chromatic scheme here is very minimalist.
Yes.
Essentially blue, yellow, white. You wanted to capture a certain essentialism of the human condition?
Maybe, I'm not sure. Yes, haven't thought about it that way, but in essence, that's what it is. I wanted the design to be very simple, and so that in some way we're not distracted, we're not taken out of what we're looking at. So yes, in that sense.
And because there are two faces, two images, two heads, two people, two persons, there's something very personalist. I'm thinking here of Gabriel Marcel and the personalism school of philosophy.
Yes.
But at the same time, and particularly during COVID-19, in which we are in shutdown, in quarantine, in confinement, one has the sense that you are throwing down the gauntlet. No one is an island. We all exist in dialogue.
Absolutely. And seek a God in the other, not in the absence of the other. So there's a tendency to escape within, but that's not necessarily something that I aspire to. Obviously, there are moments of quietude when you close your eyes and you go within, but works like this can be that I recognize the sacred in another human being. It doesn't mean that I need some kind of extraordinary experience with that person. I just immediately assume that the sacred exists in the other human being. And I think that can be a very powerful means of connecting people together. So if I recognize the sacred in another human being, then I care for that person in the same way as I would want to be cared for. Simple as that. Although I try not to make that come out very necessarily clearly, because this is not sermonizing with my work. It's simply trying to create pleasing artwork.